Hi, this is Carrie, and welcome to Tandem Talks, a podcast meant to empower you to live your life your way.
And I'm Craig. Join us as we go deeper with entrepreneurs and their journey creating success in business and life. Hello, all, and welcome to another episode of Tandem Talks. We are here with Deb Zahn, who is founder of many things, CEO of many things, but primarily founder of Craft of Consulting. She's a speaker, a podcaster. She is also the CEO of Deb Zahn Consulting. And she was also a principal of a company called Health Management Services and served as a director, deputy director for a foundation for a statewide hospital fundraising organization of sorts. She's had several different executive roles across varying different industries, and we're really pumped to have her on today. Most importantly, she has gone and done consulting, figured out how to create passive or progressive passive income from that, and empowers other people to do that in their lives. And your slogan, which I love, is you help accomplished professionals start, build, and grow a consulting business. And there are so many great high-end consultants out there that would love to do their own thing, but either through fear or lack of knowledge or lack of exposure, just haven't done anything, right? And so maybe you can just start us off a little bit with your story, like high level, how you kind of transitioned into the consulting game, and then we can take it from there.
Thanks for being here, Deb.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm delighted. Thanks for having me on. So my story is one of initial fear that I eventually overcame. So I think I wanted to be a consultant before I even fully understood what that meant. But I was working at, places that, really respected me, loved the work that I did. I was in executive positions, but I was always trying to be an entrepreneur within organizations that's not what they do. And so, I'd get a lot of no, that's great. Calm down. It's that's not what we do here.
Right.
And so there was always this frustration of wanting to do my own thing and wanting to be my own boss. But what really held me back was fear of financial insecurity. Mm-hmm. Not sure how income was going to come in, how I was going to enable it to come in. And I ended up having something really serendipitous happen, which is someone asked me to do a consulting gig when I was still working in my last position. And she did it because she'd been in a meeting with me where people were getting feisty with each other. I was facilitating, and I was able to keep the room really calm. And she had a situation where there was a significant merger within an organization that was, let's just say, people had feelings about it. Sure. And she's like, you're good with those humans and those feelings thing. So it wasn't a conflict with my employer. So I did a consulting gig and just got a taste for it and realized I really do have something valuable I can offer. Where that story should stop next is that I figured out how to do that and I became a consultant. But instead, I just kept waiting for the time to be right, and the time seemed to never be right. So there was a moment in time where I was being wooed for a new job, and somebody in a new office of a national consulting firm asked me to come join that new office, which was basically going to be like a startup. And I had my moment, and then I choked and I took the job. And I didn't end up being a consultant until 2.5 years later when I left that job and went back to her and said, I don't know what I was thinking. Is there still an opportunity to do this? So I started off as a consultant working in that firm in a New York City office. It had 7 people in it. No one knew us in the market. There wasn't really much work that they did in areas that I had expertise in. So it really was sink or swim startup. You got to figure out how to do this if you want to keep working here.
Yeah, nice. Well, so you were all in then at that point.
I was all in at that point.
You skipped the side hustle concept.
I had the taste of the side hustle. I was too afraid to go out on my own. And so I went to a firm, and then I was there for about 9 years, so quite a bit of time. And then I went out on my own. That's when I did what I call my side-by-side hustles, that's when I started the Craft of Consulting, because I wanted to be able to scale the ways that I was helping professionals suffer less and be successful faster, and still do consulting, but do it on my own. So it wasn't until 2019 that I actually said, why don't I do this my way?
Yeah. Well, congrats on the leap and the
Thank
faith.
you.
And obviously the success has been happening for you. So that's huge. Talk to us just a little bit about the fear, because you mentioned that when we were talking before, that you shouldn't have been so fearful. Like, what have you seen on the other side, like looking back, and like, how do you kind of help and coach people through that fear when that comes up?
So to basically reveal the mystery of it. So to me, it was all a mystery of how I was going to get revenue. Right. So it was either going to magically happen, and I couldn't figure out how that was going to happen, or it wasn't going to happen. and that's really the only way I thought of it. And so what I came to discover after, a pretty rough start is that this is knowledge and skills. These are new things that I have to learn and things that I have to learn how to do. And I've learned how to do things before, and I've been very successful at it. So if I treat it as not oh my gosh, why are you failing? But if I treat it as, oh, okay, there is the whole business side of consulting, business side of entrepreneurship that you have to learn, like, selling and marketing and things like that. And if you treat it as a skills and knowledge acquisition experience, then you're going to be able to be successful faster. That's when everything clicked and changed for me, when I started to treat it as recognizing that I had to learn new things.
I feel like you just paraphrased like a large section of our book. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's so
People
powerful.
Can skip chapter 7 now, I think.
Yeah.
Or dive in more.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned sales. I think for most side hustlers, for myself, when I started my first wave of side hustles, sales was the most intimidating thing for me. I mean, I could talk to people, I could build relationship. I had overall soft skills, but it didn't in my mind equate to confidence in selling a product or service. Can you walk us through a little bit on like how you built that confidence, or like even just started the process?
Yeah. So, and I had also had jobs. I mean, I had policy jobs where I talked politicians into funding things. So I was good at persuasion, but somehow it wasn't making the leap over to sales. So the first thing is always mindset, right? Like you have to know what you're selling is worth it. And when you're a consultant, it's you. And so that's a little more of a fraught area than if it's a product. But even if it's a product, it's still your baby. Yeah. And so the mindset of recognizing the value and worth before you try and describe the value and worth to someone else was the first step. The second was I had to take myself out of the center of the universe. Because what I think a lot of folks do, and definitely what I was doing, is I would show up presumably to sell my services, and I would read my resume, or I'd go on and on, essentially trying to convince them that I had value. And I think I was actually just trying to convince myself, and they were along for the ride. But I had to understand that ultimately it was about them. So the first thing I had finally figured out is first I got to know who them is. Mm-hmm. So I suffered from what a lot of folks do, which is I had a scattershot approach. I was trying to be everything to everyone. And it wasn't until I said, no, I need to focus, because if I don't focus, I'm not going to know who to reach out to. I'm not going to know what conversations I need to have. I'm not going to know what marketing I need to do. So the first step was really the clarifying in precise detail who my ideal client was, that was essentially my client's soulmate. I was a fit for them. They were a fit for me. Then clarifying with that, what's really the market? Because I worked in healthcare. Healthcare is huge. And so if you just say healthcare, you could go out and have any number of different types of conversations that are seemingly random. I had to get much more specific and niche down and say, okay, who within the healthcare market am I really trying to do what for? And that then led me to be able to define my value in very precise terms relative to what they cared about.
Yeah.
What's keeping them up at night? What are they trying to achieve that they haven't been able to? All of those nitty gritty details, so that when I went into them, it wasn't about me. It was about them and what I could help them do. And then it was just sort of the bag of, it's not really a bag of trips. I would say it's more like a toolkit of knowing how to pivot conversations towards a sale, knowing how to ask questions that give you more nuance and open the conversation in new areas. So a whole bunch of things that once you're in having the right conversation, they help you get towards closing a deal. But I had to start with like, who am I talking to? And what am I talking to them about?
Mm-hmm.
And that made all the difference.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a really neat evolution, starting with your own self-value. And I think that's where a lot of people, especially as side hustlers, get tripped up, because they're not, a front hustle. They didn't start a full-time business. A lot of people didn't even invent a product. They're maybe leveraging existing systems or products altogether, but just defining and growing their own confidence that they are good communicators. They can add value to people, and really adapt the identity of a business owner, I think sometimes takes time for people. So it's fun to hear like the evolution for you. And I think that's spot on too, like learning from each conversation. Like the first couple times you went in with a potential client, it sounds like it wasn't perfect, maybe a little awkward. Exactly. And it's like, you look at people, Antetokounmpo in the NBA, like I've seen him airball a number of shots the last couple games I've watched. He's one of the best players in the world. Like even people at every phase of the game are still going to have some embarrassing moments, but having enough self-worth and self-image to be able to still experience those gracefully and move forward and learn from it, I think is such a key tip. So I appreciate you talking us through that.
Well, and I would add, recognizing that it's likely going to happen. So no one who knew me thought I had a confidence problem. Mm-hmm. I was at the top of my game. I was really good at what I did. I knew I was really good at what I did. And there were certain things that I did that I knew I was better than most folks. So it came as a surprise to me that when I wasn't getting results right away because I wasn't applying the right strategies and techniques, that my confidence took a dive. And what I saw when I worked at the firm is invariably they would hire these, outstanding, amazing professionals that would come in, they had run huge health systems, and suddenly it's go be a consultant. And they went through the same thing I did. And it was almost they had to get over the surprise of the confidence drop and then say, all right, what do I need to do to get it back up so that I can actually go do what I need to do to get business?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, Carrie talks about it. You got to learn how to not suck at sucking, right?
That's right.
Like you got to be able to go through that dip, but not tie that dip to me as a human being. It's just like where my current skills are when it comes to entrepreneurship or business ownership, not where my skills are in my lane of expertise.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the
people
piece.
Try to attach it all together, and then they're like, I'm bad at this. And that's like, right. Oh, no, you don't have, you're a kindergartner, right?
You're year one, right?
Yeah, you're year one.
Yeah, sorry, exactly. So you can't drive a car. You're year one. Yeah. I usually describe it as a balance between you have to be a real expert in something that is of value to folks that you potentially want to sell to, but you have to be a savvy CEO. And it doesn't matter, by the way, if you're at a firm and you have to go get business, you have to be a savvy CEO of your business that you're trying to build. If you're independent, it's the same way. That's the piece where you have to, I think at the beginning, spend the most attention to make sure that you're actually operating as a business and not, just a faith-based initiative of hopefully somebody will recognize my worth and hand me money.
Right. Absolutely.
It's a lot of people's approach, unfortunately.
It really is.
So I have a lot of questions that'll take us down a rabbit hole on the coaching side. So I want to try to maybe knock the first couple of questions out quick so then we can go a little deeper on it. Like, why do this? I mean, obviously you were successful in your career if you're courting politicians and, all that stuff. Why go out on your own and start at the bottom, so to speak, right? Like just give us a quick why you're doing that versus, because I'm sure you could go back and get a good corporate job as I could at any point, or Carrie could, right? Be a preschool teacher or whatever, right?
Yeah, it's a one word answer that I'll elaborate on, which is mom. So my mom is 80 years old, and she's not like most 80-year-olds you've ever met. She kayaks, she bikes, she hikes. She's like this wild woman, routinely gets like 15,000 steps a day and has to tell me about it. So she, with my stepfather, had moved from Nebraska to be near us as they were getting older. And he ended up, there were many, many health issues. He ended up passing away. So my mom is here. We're in a rural setting. So it's not like she has, a lot of opportunities for socializing outside of us. And I realized I don't want to get to the point with her where the most connection that we have is related to doctor's appointments. And, I knew that what that was like with my stepfather, where it seemed like every conversation and interaction had something to do with failing health. I wanted to enjoy time with her while she was kayaking and biking and doing all of those cool things. So that was my big why. My other big why is I have, I'm just going to say it, I have the best husband ever. And he's 16 years older than me. So I also want to be able to spend as much time with him as possible. And we live in this gorgeous rural setting where I have a mini farm and I rescue cats and I have all of these things that I love to do. And those things were as important to me as the good things that I do in my work. So being independent, being my own boss, making choices about the businesses I want to do, and also creating, and I know you both are huge fans of this, creating opportunities for passive and progressive passive income in the mix of what I was doing was going to give me more freedom and flexibility to live a full life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's not really a one-word answer.
It was pretty remarkable, though, and illustrated a very strong point. And in your headline, the part you didn't read was that you help people grow their consulting business and have the life they dream of, but in less time.
That's right.
And I think that is the key right there that you really just described. Like there's more efficient ways to create the life you want. And I think everybody should be in the pursuit of that to some extent. So.
And to know why you're doing it and have that be your anchor as well as your North Star. And so I spent years of my life in, professional settings, killing myself and forgoing things in life that were actually meaningful to me. And I couldn't tell you why I did that today.
Yeah. It's a conditioning and it's an environment. Like you get encased in the environment and then so-and-so succeeded and you want to be at the top. And it's not bad. It's just like you get lost in it because you're there 8 hours a day or 9 hours or 10 hours. And then you're driving there and then we meet a lot of people. They spend so much time like outside of work talking about their coworkers and their job and problems at their job or good things at their job. And it's like, you realize you're not going to have that in 5 years, right? Like you realize anyways, so I hear you.
I had a moment where there was a flash for me. We were living in New Jersey at the time and we were commuting into the city where I work. And if you've ever been in New York City where the trains come in, there's just mobbed with people, or at least it once was. And we were just all huddled in going up a stair. And I just said, we are friggin' cattle. We are cattle. And we're not exactly going to slaughter, but we're going to a place that isn't really serving our lives. And I just didn't want to do it. I wanted to do what I wanted to do on my terms.
Yeah. Well, and we talk a lot about how in the 21st century, there's less job security than ever.
That's
but
right.
There's also more opportunity than ever. And so like, don't put all your chips into the job. Like it doesn't make sense. Right. So Thank you for articulating that. I think that was very clear for ourselves and any listeners. So let's talk a little bit about, as you're coaching people, and then I have a follow-up question for this that I think should be interesting, but as you're coaching people, what are some just like key patterns you see that mistakes people make? Like maybe your top couple mistakes or top couple things people do well, because obviously you've seen a lot on that spectrum.
So underpricing is number one.
Yeah.
And it impacts a lot of people. I see it tend to impact women more, which I think has lot to do with the, sexism that we all incorporate into ourselves. But that I see that quite a bit in terms of not being able to own their value, even though they have evidence that that value is there. So I had one example of someone that I was coaching who we discussed price. So one of the things I help people with is I figure out, both what pricing models they could use as well as what their price can be that makes sense in their market and makes sense with the value they're able to provide to clients. And we came up with a strategy. She went to bed. She woke up in the morning and had lowered her price. And as far as, I don't know what she watched on Netflix that did that, but something happened. And it was all related to mindset and self-worth and confidence and all of those things. And so really what my goal was is, one, to help her stick to a price that she was comfortable articulating, focusing on, you're afraid that they're going to have objections to it, but let's be less afraid by preparing for what those objections might be and getting out ahead of them by how it is you talk about what you do relative to what the price is. So she, 3 weeks into a consultant, which she actually started as a side hustle, but 3 weeks in, it's now her full hustle. 3 weeks in, she had somebody who was really excited to talk to her and meet with her. We helped her keep at her price, but she was going to go in low at like $40,000. And yet they had told her all of these other things, but it was really coming down to, again, self-confidence. So we ended up doing a tiered pricing strategy. We're increasing amounts of value based on what they said. And that $40,000, they went for the highest one. It ended up being $125,000. And by month 2, it was $200,000. And this was beyond, she couldn't even imagine that something like this could occur. But it was, so the pricing, we can talk the nuts and bolts of pricing, but ultimately we always have conversations about confidence and worth, and understanding that it really isn't self-worth. It's the value of the outcomes you can help people achieve. So that's definitely one of them. And then the other is discomfort around selling, which usually has to do with bad connotations people have with selling. So they picture the used car salesman and they picture
Absolutely.
all the bad versions that they've experienced.
The word sale has been slandered so badly.
It has. And what I find that a lot of entrepreneurs who are trying to teach people selling is they're trying to set that word aside and say, oh, it's really not selling. And I feel like if you treat it like Baltimore, then you're going to give it more power. Can we just call it that and gain and have people understand a different version of what it could be? So that's where it's all about what I try to do is to ignite people's desire to actually help people. And if you view it as what you're really doing when you're selling is trying to remove any obstacle between you and getting to them and helping them, then selling becomes a whole lot easier. And if you do it authentically, so you don't say things that you would never normally say, because no one's going to believe it when you say it.
Yeah.
Be yourself, focus on value for them, and dig into what people's pain points are and dig into what their gain points are, so that you can have a bigger desire to help them than you do an aversion to selling. So those are the two big ones. There's, as you know, a whole bunch more.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack with that. I mean, your first story, like, thank goodness for a good coach. I mean, It's interesting that woman, like her best friends, her parents were probably not like, you're worth way more. Even though they love her, they can't empower her in the way that you did. So just like very remarkable example of the power of having somebody who's willing to like breathe life into you and let you know how much value you actually can provide. And just as an entrepreneur, just investing and growing our confidence at every phase of the game is a priority, I believe. But yeah, thank you for sharing those stories. And in terms of sales, one of my favorite books that I read early on was called Go Givers Sell More by Bob Berg. I used to be afraid to sell Girl Scout cookies, which is like a slam dunk in the world of sales. So that was a great read that has helped me. And then to your point, like early on in my journey, having liberal studies degrees, no business experience, being married to like one of the most savvy, entrepreneur minded finance guys in our industry, it was just interesting how I would really try and regurgitate things that I would hear him say, but it would flop. It was not authentic. It didn't create success or results. And just that transition of me finding my own words and my own way of conveying a similar message, just how quickly that shifted to not only results, but like my own lane that I developed actually, was so much more empowering also. I didn't have to think about what I wanted to say. I could just be myself and share. And that resonates.
And it totally resonates. So I had someone who was having trouble because the people who truly needed what she offered were friends. She had gotten to know them over time through the professional setting. And so the notion of selling to a friend, she had a hard time getting over it. And I see this actually quite a bit. And, part of what I told her is, so what are they struggling with right now? Because I know, it sounds like there's some significant shifts going on in the market. And she starts listing all of these things that they're struggling with. And I said, so of everything you just said, what can you help them with? She said, pretty much all of those. I'm like, what are you doing? Stop talking to me. Go and help them. But she felt awkward. And I said, and my advice to her was then be awkward. So the first sale I made was to someone I had known for years and we had become friends. And I made a joke of it. And I'm like, all right, well, this is the sales portion of the conversation. She thought it was hilarious. And then we had a real conversation about sales. So I had to find my path to doing it. And it has evolved over time as I've gained comfort with it. But you can't make stuff up and just like read a script and think that's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. People won't believe it and they won't trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to buy from you.
And you could spend a long time trying, but very unsuccessfully. And it can be so frustrating. So, yeah.
So let's go another layer deeper on the coaching. Those are a couple things that you see people not do. And I agree with those. And to your point, especially if you have a deep expertise in something, please price accordingly when you know you can help someone. On the other end of the spectrum, if you're brand new and you're like, maybe you're in your 20s, you don't have a super deep expertise, but you're working on starting a business, price accordingly as well, right? Like you can actually do work for free and like gain referrals and slowly build up revenue and then increase your price accordingly. But again, you got to know like where you're at and the actual value you're going to drive, right?
Yeah. And my take on that is absolutely, if you don't have a lot of experience in a certain area, but you're going to show up and you're going to be helpful in some way, but maybe you can't be a thought partner. Maybe you can't be a strategic advisor for them. Then don't charge like you can do that. Charge for exactly sort of the level that you're able to contribute. And that takes some radical honesty with yourself in both directions. And that's why if there's ever a entrepreneur or consulting superpower, it's self-reflection, is really honestly being able to look at yourself and say, at what level am I contributing? And then what are people paying for that within a market? Not, oh, what do I think I could get away with? Or no, I can get away with anything. I'm going to charge some ridiculous amount. And I've had both versions happen to me when consultants have tried to get business from me when I was an executive.
Right. Absolutely. No, perfect. So let's go a little deeper on this. We are huge believers in the who, right? And so who we associate with defines the language we speak, which oftentimes defines the way we think. We don't speak English because we're interested or talented at English. We speak it because of the environment we grew up in, right?
Yeah.
And so a huge part of that association is a coach, a guide, a mentor, a beacon, somebody who's further along, who can be like, yeah, don't step there. Oh, you step there. Here's how you get out of that.
Yeah.
But the challenge, I think one of the challenges right now is, number one, people don't prioritize it, or if they do, it's sort of like a feigned process, right? And so they don't like really, I need a coach and then I'm going to invest into getting one. But then the other problem is there's a lot of people who are coaches, right? And have just like have an interest in something and then they put a plaque on their door or AK on their branding on their social media and they're a coach, right? And so we have a big issue with people saying you're a coach if you've never actually done that thing well to a high level. Like that's an ethical issue from my perspective.
I agree.
But from your perspective, how do people find a good coach? And obviously, if they're going to be doing the consulting thing, they can just call you, right? They can reach out to you, which you'll tell us how to do that later. But just across industries, what are some strategies to find a coach that's the right fit for you?
Yeah. So the first is to be clear what you're trying to get out of it. And so if you want someone who's just going to say they're there, no, you're smart, no, you're going to be great, and you're just trying to get somebody who's going to be in your corner and be a confidence boost, which is not a bad thing to have,
right?
Then don't spend money on a coach. Find a membership group, find, meetups or things like that where people are going to be there to be able to provide emotional support to each other. So if all you're really looking for is an emotional support, I wouldn't go to a coach for that.
Yeah. Better for an association is what
or
how we would say it. Yeah. Like
exactly.
A group organization. Yeah.
And I think there is a real need for that, because I know when I started, I reached out to someone I knew who was an entrepreneur. She actually used to work for me. And she started, I will call her out because she's fabulous, Disney Food Blog, which is now a multi-million-dollar organization. I mean, business, she's amazing. I reached out to her because I didn't even know how to think about it. But really, if you want to coach, then you should be results-oriented. And if you're results-oriented, then you have to be able to find a coach whose specialty is getting you the results specifically that you want. And for me, the only reason to come to me is if you want to figure out for yourself in a way that you're going to be able to take on, because I firmly believe I should never be creating a dependency on me, whether I'm consulting or I'm a coach. So if you want to learn the tools and skills to be able to generate the income that you want to have and have the life you want, I'm the right coach who can help you do that. If really what you're having a hard time with, and I've seen this, is, setting boundaries in your life and carving out the time you need and figuring out productivity, because that's really where you're stumbling. Find someone who that's really what their specialty is, and they have a deep well of knowledge and skills and strategies to help you do that. So clarity before you start spending your money, I think is extraordinarily helpful. And then vet them. I would say, one, you have to have a conversation with them. You have to ask questions. You should be asking questions about what they've helped other people accomplish. If all they do is say, oh, I've done this, and they're shouting out big numbers, I'd be a little suspicious of that. So I do tell people the amount of income you earn is really going to be dependent on the choices you make, and it's going to be dependent on the market in which you're operating in. I can't promise everybody that they're going to get a, six-figure contract within 6 weeks. If somebody claims that they can, then kick the tires a little bit more to make sure that what they're telling you, that they actually have the track record to back it up. And I would also ask for references and talk to people. At least talk to one or two people that they've worked with. If you're making a big investment, and really good coaches are a significant investment. There's some bad coaches also charge a lot, but good coaches usually know it, that they're good at it, and they charge a premium price for it. Then you want to make sure that that's going to be worth it. And then I would say, when you're in it, this is where self-reflection comes in handy, is if you see red flags, don't discount them. My husband and I have a phrase that we love, which is never override. If you're seeing something, pay attention to it, interrogate it, make decisions relative to it. So if you get into a situation, I know some people who've had some poor experiences with coaches, and they're not really helping you to their results, or they're venturing into therapy, which really they don't have a business to do without the training and skills to be able to do that, then you should pay attention to that and decide if you want to keep doing it. I mean, I'm fortunate. I'm married to a behavior change expert. So we talk about behavior change all the time because we are complete nerds when it comes to that. At previous executive positions, I have mentored and coached people for a long time simply because I don't like to see people suffer and I like to see them succeed. So I've honed it over a very long time, and then I sought additional knowledge to become better at it. But if somebody doesn't have that and they just hung up a shingle and they're suddenly a coach, then kick the tires a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, and I love your point about getting references, because that goes a long ways. I mean, if there's other people that they've said this person made a huge impact and here's how, like, that means a lot versus just like whatever's on a website, right?
That's right. And if they have no testimonials up, that would make me want to dig in a little bit further. And it's possible that they don't have them because they're new, possibly, but generally coaches will have people who are so delighted by what they do that they're willing to submit testimonies.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah, I think that's a good comprehensive approach to finding a coach. And I think it's more important than ever with social media because you can portray yourself however you want.
Yes.
There's not a lot of accountability on social. So I think those are really strong tips. And I do feel like you've used the analogy of kick the tires, maybe even in our book.
It's a car thing, I can do like
good visual too, right?
I have like 4 sports analogies and like maybe 1 or 2 car analogies, and then it's all like cats.
I hope you have some good cat references.
I tend to, yeah.
Oh, well, I think that's really helpful. One thing that I want to go back like a little ways in your journey is just like those first 6 months, that first year. Do you have any like good, embarrassing, funny stories that could just like empower people? Because sometimes we get the highlight reel and that's empowering in a whole other way. But like, what are some like weird, funny things that you went through?
Oh, goodness gracious. So the first 6 months were rough. And so I have plenty that I could share about that. But I remember actually somehow finagled myself into a meeting with someone who was a pretty, high level executive at a very large organization I was hoping to work with. And I prepared, but I didn't prepare in the way that was actually going to be really helpful. Preparation is one of my superpowers. It is how I get most of my business. I tend to be well prepared, but you have to know obviously how to prepare. And, he's on his phone the whole time. He's literally texting. At one point, he just starts spinning his chair. I wasn't sure how to handle it. So I kept talking. And then at the end of it, he's like, yeah, I don't know why you came here, but, it was nice meeting you. And it was just like, oh, that was brutal. And, and it was horrible and it was terrible. And I learned a lot from it. And it hasn't impacted my ability to generate revenue one little bit.
Right.
And he probably tells people in my market, but he luckily probably doesn't even remember my name.
Yeah.
So I could probably run into him now and he'd be like, oh yeah, so-and-so said great things about you. And I'm like, you have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
But that was brutal. And so that was the most extreme version. And the other versions were just going out and talking to people and talking about their dogs and talking about their kids and talking about whatever. And the whole time I'm just thinking, when are they going to ask me to help them? When are they going to ask me to help them? And not recognizing that it was my job to facilitate a sale. And so there was a whole lot of that. And I felt waterlogged at a certain point because I had so much tea and cocktails and everything in me. I thought, well, I'm hydrated. That's I can say that.
I'm hydrated. Oh, well, I think those are very relatable stories in their own way and just provide people a little bit of like gut check that there's going to be some moments like that and like prevail, move forward, move on. And so thanks for keeping it relatable for us.
That's fine.
There's a big difference. There's a big difference between participating in a conversation and leading one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And I think as a consultant, or if you're doing business development or sales or whatever you want to call it, like you have to learn how to lead and drive and like and discover, like, do we want to move forward or not, but do that in a way that's effective and kind, you know.
You do a very good job, by the way.
Oh, thank you, honey.
Aw. Wow. Yeah, I finally developed some phrases that I use when they're appropriate to use, because I'm a big fan of the toolbox approach. Because deep listening is really important. So, and co-discovery is actually really important. But how you pivot a conversation towards a sale is usually the trickiest part. And so, I've come up with phrases that are really helpful, which is I'll say, so I just heard 2 things I think I could help you with. And now we've pivoted the conversation towards that. And that makes it much easier. But if you don't have sort of a phrase that works every time and you just let your nerves take over, it's going to be hard to pivot. I years ago was a self-defense instructor for women. And one of the things that we taught is to have your phrase that works in almost any situation. So in the moment, if there's a potential threat, you aren't trying to think of what to say. You have your line and it's on the tip of your tongue because you've practiced it repeatedly. It's no difference with this, which is first of all, prepare ahead of time, have your questions ready to be through a co-discovering process, but then have your questions that you ask to learn more, questions to ask to demonstrate your knowledge of who they are and what environment they operate in, and have the things that you can say or ask that pivot a conversation. So my first gig I ever got was because I asked one question. And I said, so, these are the things that I've seen that are pretty significant that's happening in your market. How are you folks preparing for that? And we went from chit-chatty about her really cute dog and showing me pictures to her just kind of slumping in her seat saying, I don't think we are prepared. And now we're having a whole different conversation. And that was the first engagement I ever got.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Real quick, what was the phrase that you came up with for the self-defense? Carrie just started kickboxing, so
is this
have the phrase? Is
this PG-13? I'll amend it.
PG, whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, mine was back the fuck off. I felt like the F word added a little something.
It adds a lot of oomph, for sure.
Yeah.
F off. All right.
I love it.
I'm gonna try that sometime when my kids are trying to climb on me and I need some personal space.
That's right. Exactly. You have enough money for therapy later. They'll be fine.
Yeah, right.
That's true. Well, thanks for being with us today. Yeah. I mean, we really, one of our main themes is just helping people stay focused on what matters most. And I think that you've embodied that with, the way that you've approached your consulting and having a clear why you've approached your consulting. And so we appreciate that mindset and delivering that to other people. And thanks for being results oriented. I mean, I think that that's something that gets missed. Somehow in business, it should be the most important thing, and somehow it gets missed, right? And I find myself missing it sometimes too. It's like, no, what result am I actually trying to create here? And so thanks for bringing us back to that, and give it over to Carrie to wrap us up.
Yeah. So Deb, where can people find you? Where's the best place that you tee up?
You bet. So the easiest thing is to go to my website, which is craftofconsulting.com. And there you can, find out information about my podcast, which it's so nice to be on someone else's podcast. And I have a number of, free tools. So if somebody wants to learn some of the things that I do, I have tools that you can download that teach you how to do it. And then I also have other things that I offer, like courses, online courses, as well as coaching if you need a little more one-on-one support.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. And you're on LinkedIn and Instagram also. People can find you on social, right?
Absolutely. And on Instagram is where you will also be able to see beautiful pictures of the life I have constructed. So I do post about vegetables. And I actually have a separate Instagram account called Mom Time Adventures. And what my mom and I do is every Wednesday, I've carved out 3 hours that is dedicated to her to do whatever we want to do. And so we go on sometimes I fix things around her house, and sometimes we go on adventures, and we document it every single week in Mom Time Adventures. So
that is so cool.
People get to know my mom too. She's way cooler than me.
She sounds amazing. Yeah, I can't wait to check it out. Well, and I just feel like today's podcast gave people such a neat teaser trailer of your skills and the way you help people and serve people. So definitely check out Deb's accounts and also her website. It is a pretty sexy website. We were looking at it. It's very well built, and get some of those freebies too, to dive more into, some of her thought process. So thank you so much for being on. We'll put a bunch of links in the show notes, and I hope everybody enjoys the grind and takes care. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to today's episode.
Please subscribe and leave a review, and be sure to visit tandemconsulting.co/talks.